Hello and welcome to another video from There and Back Logistics. My name is Craig Smith. This video is something of a follow-on from our previous video and is targeted at the proposed FMCSA changes, which came out earlier this year. I assume most, if not all, have heard about these changes, but there's still some confusion about what sort of impacts they'll have and how they'll work. Before I get started, I want to put these out there. Trucker Nation has done some very good videos on the hours of service revamps. They have in-depth videos with examples, and it's a really good resource for truckers in general. There's a drive to get truckers to make public comments about what they think of the proposed changes. This closes in October on the 7th, I believe. I've provided the link for this right here, but I'm going to link these in the description of this video as well when it gets posted, so you can go straight from there. So what are the changes? There's basically 5 of them. We have a change to the 30-minute break, a change to the sleeper berth exception, or the 8-2 split, as some people call it. The 14-hour on-duty rules get a bit of a change. There's a change to the adverse driving conditions exception, and there's a change to the short haul exception. As a disclosure, I've read through these and watched some of the videos. I personally see these as being really good changes and all in the driver's best interests, but that doesn't mean that you have to agree with me. And if you see a problem with how something is set up, don't hesitate to either respond to this video or post a public comment. The last thing anybody wants is for some bad legislation to become law, because then everybody is going to be screwed and they're going to have to go back and repeal it, and they might never put anything in. Even if it was partially good, they'll repeal the whole thing. Okay, so when we're talking about the 30-minute break, currently this is 30 minutes of uninterrupted off-duty or sleeper berth, where you're supposed to relax, grab something to drink, walk around, harass other drivers. In general, just do things that make you happy. It's set up as every 8 hours of on duty or driving, so 4 and 4, you have to take a break. But the new regulations are set up so that you can take your 30 minutes on duty as well. And it also clarifies that it's only 8 hours of consecutive driving. So right now, if you do 6 hours of driving and 2 hours of on duty, you have to take a break. If you do 1 hour of driving and 7 hours on duty, you have to take a break. They want to change it so that it's only 8 hours of consecutive driving. What does this mean? In a nutshell, it means that if you drive for 6 hours and then get loaded and it takes more than 30 minutes, that whole loading time counts as a 30-minute break. And it won't require you to take another 30-minute break 2 hours later. It also means that you aren't going to be forced to take a 30-minute break in the middle of an on-duty session, which means that if you're in the middle of loading, you don't have to run out to your truck and do your off-duty, so that you're not in violation on your logs. In my opinion, it makes it easier for a driver to keep accurate and legal logs, and if you pair it up with some of the other proposals, it can do really good things for what you do in a day. I'll get to some of that in a little bit later. The sleeper berth change I didn't really talk about much in the previous video, but the sleeper berth or the 8-2 exception, that's also getting a change. Previously we talked about it only briefly, and it was accompanied by the poor distressed driver being comforted by his friend with the awkward tattoo plastered across his forehead. It's worth mentioning I have nothing against tattoos, obviously, and in fact, I consider some tattoos to be incredibly moving pieces of artwork. They're a way for people to express what they are on the outside and work with what they've been given, even if in some cases that doesn't seem to be very much. But back to the 8-2 split, which is really a big change. At the moment you have a 14-hour clock, you can't pause it. It keeps running even if you go off duty for your 30-minute break, if you're on duty, if you're fueling, whatever, it keeps going. The only way it stops is if you do an 8-2 split. You take 8 hours off, and then whatever you had left over, if you are on duty and working for 7 hours, take your 8 off, you've still got 7 hours of on duty left, just for this example. You can still do it, but then you have to take at least 2 more hours off, and this counts against your time basically. It doesn't reset it in the way that it should, in the way that I think anyway. The proposal wants to adjust it. First of all, it wants to make it so you can potentially do a 7-3. You can go for 6 hours, take 7 in the sleeper, and this pauses your 14. You have 8 hours left on your 14 after the 6 is taken out of there. If you've driven for those 6 hours, you have 5 hours left on your drive time, and then you can take the other 3 to go with the 7. It functionally fulfills the requirements of your 10. It makes the split more viable. You're no longer borrowing against yourself. You don't have this issue of the shorter 2 of the split counting against your 14. Neither counts against your 14. So to my mind, it means when the traffic's bad, you're going through an inner city, or there's an accident that shuts down the road, you can save your hours and rest, and then still have the same amount of time available on your 14 and on your 70. I'm just a big fan of flexibility and versatility, and I feel like this proposal does a lot to fix a lot of the problems with the 8-2 split. Something a little bit more straightforward is the changes to the 14-hour on-duty rules. 14 hours in a day on duty, it keeps running. The only thing that pauses it is, as we just talked about, the 8-2 split or the 7-3 split if the previous proposal passes. Basically, if a driver runs out of their 14, they're shut down, they can't drive anymore, even if they have hours on their drive time left. New proposal says that if you take an off-duty break of between 30 minutes and a maximum of 3 hours, you can pause your clock. So like I just said, with the inner city driving and you're waiting for a rush hour to pass or you're waiting for an accident to clear on the road, you can pull off to the side and pause your clock and then finish driving. And then when you finish out the day, you have to take a 10-hour reset, but it doesn't affect your rules regarding drive time. So it's really great in the sense that it pauses your 14. It's the first time you can do that without completely screwing up your hours with an 8-2 split. But if you run a full 14-hour day and it includes a 3-hour pause from the maximum you're allowed to take with this, you're still going to be capped at 11 hours of driving. You're going to have a 17-hour day and you're only going to be driving 11 hours of it. So that's worth bearing in mind, that they aren't changing the drive time just yet. Adverse driving conditions exception, I mentioned this one in the previous video, and it states that when something happens that affects road conditions like bad weather rolling in, something that wasn't apparent when you were dispatched at the time, you can extend your drive time by up to 13 hours. It extends it by 2 hours to either get to your destination or get somewhere safe. What's being proposed is, as I see it, rolling the 16-hour exception straight onto this. And this makes sense. You can't drive if you're out of on-duty time. Bumping up the drive time to 13 hours for the adverse driving conditions exception only works if you have on-duty time to support it. If you're already almost at your 14 of on-duty and they bump up your drive time, it's not going to make a difference. But if you do a 2-hour across the board bump, it's a lot safer, and it means that you can get somewhere safe. You don't have to worry about fudging your logs or running out of compliance. It means that you can get off a bad highway out of bad weather into a rest stop or to the destination. I really like this one as well, and it makes a lot more sense the way that it's proposed. The last one is the short haul exception, which is one of the first things I mentioned in the previous video. I referred to it also as the 100/150 exception because, as it stands for a CMV driver, if you're operating within 100 miles of a terminal and you go back to the same terminal, you can run for 12 hours, you don't have to keep logs, and you're exempt from the EDL mandate. The new proposal is basically bumping this up to 14 hours of on duty within 150 miles, and everything else is staying the same. I like this one because for the short haul guys, this gives them more availability to run around their area. It's not going to necessarily affect the guy who's doing over the road work, but eventually they might decide to go short haul, and this just makes it a lot easier for them. It gives them the same amount of hours and it extends the amount of distance that they can cover. It's really just good in that sense, in my opinion. Now I'm going to reiterate, these are proposals. They're still potentially going to be shot down because of perceived dangers or other issues. Some might pass, some might not. It's hard to tell. But the best part is if they all pass, they all go into effect concurrently. So you end up with the ability to take your 30-minute break on duty, and you can pause your clock for between 30 minutes and 3 hours later in the day if you need to, as long as you take your 10-hour reset afterwards to reset it. Or you can go with the 7-3 split. And as long as you don't drive for more than 8 hours in a row, you don't need to take a 30-minute break, so you can just keep going and going. And you drive, and then you sleep, and then you drive some more, and then you sleep some more, if that's how you want to do it. If you're running a really long over the road from like Washington to Florida. Like I said, personally, I think this is really good. It gives the drivers more tools to work with. It also empowers the tools they already have. It's a good thing when a driver has more than one option of how to recover from a bad twist in the day. If there's a wreck, do they want to split in the sleeper? Do they want to pause the clock for 3 hours and wait for it to clear up? Do they want to call it in its adverse conditions and just sit there and wait it out and then be able to still finish out the day? It also means that there'll be less of the drivers sitting at home and preparing for the next shift like this. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, I had some good information here, some good clarification. I really want to push what I said before about going and making comments on this. If people have questions, go ahead and ask me. Um, I'll follow up with clarification if there's anything specific. Or like I said, Truckin' Nation has really good resources there, and they'll also push the public comments. The more in favour comments there are, the more likely that some of these proposals will actually pass. If there's an issue that you see, voice that as well, because we don't want everybody just saying, yeah, we want to do this, if there's really a concern that, someone might take advantage of the way that something's done, or something's worded in such a way that it's going to lead to issues. Like I said, if there are any specific questions, feel free to ask. Again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.